good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's September 26th meeting. Our apologies for this meeting starting late. The traffic was horrendous and some of us got stuck in traffic, so please accept our apologies. We have a very short agenda this evening. We're actually going to start with agenda item 2 because one of our other guests is stuck in traffic as well. So agenda item 2 is to discuss and approve the executive summary that the Board of Selectmen will be mailing out regarding the special town meeting on Monday, October the 7th. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on the executive summary that is included in your package. Bob, thank you very much for taking the first pass at this. We felt it was important to send something out to citizens of Dover to give them a summary of what is going to be discussed at town meeting, what we're voting on, and a little bit of history of how we got to where we are. So I think this does it.
Are we going to be able to have this in the paper as well? Will this appear?
No.
In the paper?
In the paper, in the newspapers.
We could certainly
we
reach
could
out
try,
and ask
but
what it costs, but it's pretty lengthy to print it in the paper.
There, I was just under the impression that at some point in time last year, we had published for either the last town meeting or the prior town meeting.
The only reason we can't do it is time. I'm not sure that we have enough time because the printer's gonna come tomorrow to pick this up. Chris, and when did you say we'd get it back?
He anticipates Wednesday getting it back to us.
Right, so it's gonna get in mailboxes by Friday, I guess. We might be able to get it into the newspaper if somebody wants to contact the newspaper. We can certainly put a copy on the website, make it available to people earlier.
I think between the mailing, the write-ups that I've seen the committee
Right.
publish in papers to date, as well as leveraging our existing channels on social media and website, my sense is that would be a good kind of coverage to notify people on the special town meeting and what's in front of them.
Yeah, so what were the legal objections to the original draft that we all agreed to?
I don't want to speak for council, but
I'm happy to, if you want to jump in.
sure.
So Chris just asked me today to take a quick look at this. There are no legal objections per se, that, there's nothing unlawful about what was drafted. As a lawyer, I have an incredibly difficult time holding myself back from making any edits at all. So there were just some stylistic changes as well as some reformatting that I thought made it easier to read. The only substantive change I really thought was prudent to make was taking out the construction cost estimates for the various different options. The selectmen will know, the special town meeting is not at the point of voting on the construction costs for any of these options. Those numbers are certainly already out there from the Carroll Community Center Committee, but I thought it was probably best that the selectmen don't promulgate those numbers in writing until we have a more firm plan for construction going forward.
That's an opinion. That's not a legal issue, though. It doesn't push us out of neutrality, does it?
Correct. I did not have an objection to the tone or the contents of it from the perspective of this becoming, rather than an informative mailing, a political advocacy piece. That's correct. I have no concerns on that front. These are suggested edits from your legal advisor.
So one of the things that we've tried very hard to do is be very consistent with all the documents that we produce. And the original letter was actually modeled on one of the summary of findings that we also have distributed to the town.
The center, the Carroll Community Center Committee or the Board of Selectmen has distributed?
The Carroll Community Center Committee.
Right, so you're speaking as the Board of Selectmen now, which is different.
Could be, but it's important to keep the messaging intact. And if we're going to be, if this is going to everybody, it seems to me that given the questions and answers that we've had over time and the dialogue that we had with the citizens, it's well worth putting the detail in that was in and not summarizing it, because then people won't be as fully informed as they could possibly be. So my preference on this would be to strike whatever is necessary to make sure that we comply with the law, but basically use the version that we already had worked on.
So what's the risk of having the estimated costs in there?
So at this point, the idea of estimating construction costs before you have any schematic designs, let alone construction designs, is, although it has a rational basis, really is not a solid number to put out there, and it's incredibly risky. A $10 to $13 million range is very narrow when you're talking about public construction, especially when you're talking about public construction that's not likely to occur for a year or more in the future, given the fluctuations in the public construction market over the last 5 or 10 years and likely going forward. I understand those numbers are already out there. Perhaps the plans will come well within those numbers, but at this point you don't even have plans on which to estimate construction costs. So it is just, I believe that it is just too speculative to put those numbers affirmatively out there as the position of the Board of Selectmen.
But are we doing that, or are we just simply saying, you know, right now, the best estimates for these are this, I see where you're coming from, but I think, you know, the whole exercise of having town meeting for some people, depending on what option they pick, is gonna depend on the estimated cost.
Sure. I think that those costs just need to have a large asterisk next to them, that they are speculative and not based on any schematic plans that have been created. And because I fear the conversation will then get to what you want to see in construction costs, which again, you need the plans before you can get to the, and you're only at the plan stage, you're not at the.
Well, we're not even at the
plan stage.
Right.
You know, so we're not, so I see where you're coming from. So if we were to say, you know, currently, the best estimates we have based, you know, and just put like, a footnote there saying, you know, there is no guarantee that the actual costs will come in at this range, but right now, based upon construction, right.
So I am most comfortable taking them out. That is a judgment call for you all to make. That is not my call to make, but I certainly am more comfortable with some sort of proviso on the numbers.
Okay. So, you know, the number's already out there.
Yeah.
So I agree, you know, it's, when you read it here, we don't say in detail where the numbers come from. So I would feel comfortable.
Well, I think we did in the original one. I'm not sure in this one.
Right, but I think there's no reason not to put it front and center that, you know, these numbers are really high-level estimates, and to specifically say there's no guarantee that the actual construction costs will come in at $10 to $13 million. It's currently our best estimate.
My only concern is something in writing coming back to bite you all down the road.
Nina, what could that be? Just hypothetically, what what could be,
Your plans come in and it's $15 million, and folks at town meeting stand there and say, you told us 10 to 13 and now it's 15.
And then they get
Lied
to
us.
vote no.
You didn't do, right, they will always have that option to, we're not at that point yet.
Right.
But there's a political risk there of putting out numbers that may not end up being realistic. That's the only thing that's my only concern.
one of the things that we talked about with our moderator, who happens to be here tonight, last week, 2 weeks ago, is having the preface by the moderator at that moment right before.
No, I'll do the preface. Jim doesn't want to do the preface.
Okay. Then if you did the preference, or if we had that segment, that unit of conversation prior to that, would that suffice?
Well, no, because
It's
this is going out in writing. That's the point. This is going out in writing. At town meeting, we're able to communicate in detail how we came up with these estimates, how these are very soft estimates that, the actual cost could come in at $20 million, but we don't know, we don't know what they are, and we're not asking you to vote on them
It's not actually
tonight.
relevant, right? Because.
Well, if it weren't relevant, then you'd
Well,
be
no, it's
happy
not
to keep it out.
It's not relevant
but
this
you're
way.
not.
What we've said is, we've looked at past work and we've updated it. That's based on actual work. We've looked at other towns and we've literally explained what we did for the estimate, right? We don't know what people will choose to build if they go for either new or renovate. We don't know that. It's not knowable. And so people may choose during the design and build phase to put in a swimming pool, to put in a gymnasium. And so.
Right, so the only thing is here, just say, put somewhere, I don't know what the objection is, just say, these are really soft estimates and ranges could be much higher than this. But
I
for the
don't-
purpose of this
I don't have the
communication.
original. Every number we have says estimate or approximate. Some of it's asterisk. So I mean,
why
other than
not
put it in red.
Well, why not just put a footnote so that people know what it is? I would be comfortable with
Yeah,
that.
okay. But I prefer the original draft that we sent over.
So what I can do is I can,
I like the table, but I don't really care. I thought the pros and cons on the table was advantages and disadvantages was, it took what we said and just put it in the table.
Yeah,
but-
so on the slides, it's in the table.
So, I thought that was just easier to look at.
so maybe what I'll do at the end of the document, if it's all right with the board and the board so chooses, I'll just put an asterisk that says all construction costs here are estimated costs.
So since I'm a pain in the ass, every time you show the 1, the 10, and the 13, you should have a 1 next to it that goes down to the bottom of the footnote and
And just
says
put it in
these are
red.
estimates. Do you know what I mean? So you just footnote the numbers.
Sure, okay. Would you like me to keep the table?
I would. I like
Yeah.
that.
Okay. The only thing, now we've had the discussion about the concerns about kind of communicating construction costs. I would just recommend that the end of the last sentence in the first paragraph that states an approximate budget they would support, that we just strike that because as it reads, it seems as though town meeting will be voting on an approximate budget they would support.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Does
Do
the
we
board
need to
want
vote?
to take an official vote on the, maybe just the
motion
original
to-
version based on the discussion?
So make a motion to approve the original version of the Selectmen's letter to the town as amended, tonight's discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for your comments. I think they were valid. The next item is to revisit the recommendation of the Personnel Board, and I understand that the warrant had also voted yes on the recommendation. Right. We had asked the Personnel Board to put together some additional analysis for us. Specifically, we wanted to understand what percentage of the population that fell under this, the non-union, was still receiving steps, and which ones were at the maximum step so that they were receiving a COLA only.
Okay. Perhaps I wasn't clear. I thought I explained that last time, but this is the first time the person on board has ever gotten the detail on the numbers. So
Okay.
this is our first look at it in 20 years. But
This was a great schedule.
okay. So the people we're looking at is really the 39 non-union management people.
Right.
All right, and that group of people, the 39, 20 of them are at the maximum. So they will not be getting a general increase. So it's about half, if you want to look at it that way. And so the numbers that we're looking at here, and Chris was confirmed with me, that the 1% of base and 2% of the base is 100 for all. So we're talking about half of that number at a broad level. So this is not a lot of money. The other thing is that one of the things we had a conversation was a little bit more difficult because I was on the phone, but the warrant committee had some conversation around it too. And I think that what's driving some of the activity, it's also driving us to think about doing things differently with study next year, is if you look at this, it's 20 years, and we've not gotten ourselves to the 50th percentile.
Right.
So either we tried to be as aggressive as we can be and be part of the process here and be respectful of the kind of money we're spending, but after 20 years, we should be able to be the 50%.
No, not necessarily. The sample size, from an
Is small.
economic standpoint, our sample size is smaller. The numbers that you're comparing to are larger. The sample size that you're comparing to is larger, so you could quite literally never catch up. The best of intention can be to get to the 50th percentile, but in reality, we could always be behind.
Well, one of the
I would
things we-
defer to our assistant town moderator, who happens to share the same economic viewpoint as I, but
I think the other thing that we've really thought about is that the general increase may not be the solution, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
To looking at people behind market. And one of the things we did back in 2001, when we first did the study, is we realized we had some severe cases of people below market. And we actually had to fix a period of time, one time, when we adjusted the positions that were out of range. And so I think what we're looking at now is to do the pricing study again to see where it stands and to look at what the solution is. Maybe it's not the general increase. Maybe it's looking at 2, 3, whatever kind of numbers where people, positions have lagged for years and fix it and move on. But the other thing you have to consider is the numbers that we're using. The data that we're using is data from this geographic area. And so we're looking at those numbers saying, those are the numbers, generally speaking, that other people are seeing, people choosing their jobs or staying with their jobs. And the reality is that we don't always get people from other towns. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But we're looking at a market. And an accountant can be, not easily, but can be an accountant in a town or can be in a business. They're very different worlds. But you've got to look at your market. And when we started this process in 2001, we had no data. Now we have data. Is it perfect data? No. But it is something that we've used over 20 years of time to give us a thinking and a look as to what information we have to make the best choice we can. And this is data oriented, but it is sure not scientific. It's making the best call we can make out 2 years in the budget to keep our people in a reasonable financial state.
Also, I think it's important to recognize that the way corporate wage structure and corporate wage increases work is really different from the municipal segment. And I was thinking about this after our meeting. when you work in corporate America, it's a lot easier to, you get raises. You get a cost of living raise, and then you move up in a company, you move up to, you do more, they give you more money. In municipalities, and it's the same with the teachers, you don't have that. So you start out at a set salary, and the way you move up is by the number of years that you've stayed there. And, in theory, more experience makes you a more valuable employee. So we can't discount that, especially when we're comparing ourselves to other towns, because this is the wage structure. We may not like it, but this is the wage structure, and it's not going to change anytime soon. And so the only way to get these people to what we believe is market is to have these two components. And yes, when you look in the outside, it looks huge that some people are getting 5% increases in an inflationary environment that's 1 or 2%. But I think that, to me, is the market as I thought about that.
I think the other thing that I'd like to ask when we go out and do our study is to ask the other towns, what are you using for a target? Are you using the 50th percentile? Are you using the 60th? Are you looking at 70th?
No, that's
What
right.
are your target? And it'd be very interesting to know. I don't think that 50% is a very aggressive target, but it would be very interesting to know what other towns try to pay the people to. And then it will give us more data to be able to move people to the right place. And again, this is not an extraordinary cost to the town. This is not a lot of money.
The two-edged sword, Mary, in that line of reasoning, which is true. It's not a lot of money. It's not a big chunk of our budget. It's the optics of the 3% versus a 2.5% that we've negotiated from a union standpoint in a collective bargaining union negotiation. So when you introduce that 3% number, as we have done in the past, that 3% number becomes a benchmark by which the unions and other bargaining positions are going to use to their advantage.
It's not happening.
It happened on 7 different occasions in this room over the course of negotiations over our last.
The other question is though, are the union positions better marketed? And so I don't know how to judge
So,
that. It's apples and oranges when you start to
It
look
is.
at unions and non-unions.
I agree. There are 2 very different wage-based wage scales, 2 very different sample sizes, because there are lots of other components that go into the union contract that don't go into the non-union contract. So we're painfully aware of that. And we're also very well aware over the negotiations that we've had with non-union members who we've tried to attract, and comparing those highly qualified employees that we think we've done a very good job securing, comparing those people today to how long it took their predecessors to get to this rate is a very different comparison. So if you look at the age and stage of some of the employees in that sample size, if they've been in their positions for a long period of time, to try to get younger, newer employees to the 50th percentile of that sample size is a big jump. It may require 3%, 4%, 5% to get to that 50th percentile, because it's just an age and stage of where that group of employees are. Around us everywhere, the employee base is older than it's ever been, and that's not changing. So it's going to be harder, back to our original point, it's going to be harder for us to get to that, and it's going to require more money. I'm just fearful of that 3% being the benchmark. Do you have?
Me?
The other
Yes.
My
question
turn?
you have to ask is, are you hiring people at the right level coming in?
Right.
We classically brought them in very low in range. Now, we do that if you're not skilled, if you don't have experience or things. But if you look at the town, we have to be asked if we want to bring in someone with a certain set in range. Then, for example, it has to be great. I think we've only been asked twice. That seems a little unusual unless we're really hiring very junior people or whatever, but, you know, I don't know, there's a whole bigger issue, I don't know if we're bringing people into this. So it's complex, it's complex.
Okay, so I'm not going to talk about all of the issues around hiring. I mean, it is complex. We talked about it the last time we were here. I'm going to focus on two things. One is, I agree with John a lot, if we're behind the eight ball, right, market surveys of comparable towns, and we find that we're below, the only way to catch people up is through an adjustment. You know, and that's what we used to do. If, for whatever reason, a particular aspect of the market got hot, and our salary structures were not set up in order to keep people current, you did an adjustment. So I think that's the solution for getting to whatever the target is. If and only if we are substantially beyond, and there's actually evidence that it's having an impact on either retaining people or attracting people. And so that's sort of my take. The second thing is about COLA. And I literally see very little hard evidence to do anything more than 2%. If you look at the bond market, bond interest rates, if you look at the inflation market, the Federal Reserve is lowering things. No one thinks that we're going into a high of an inflationary period. People are worried about recession. And when I look, the other piece of this, and the thing why I'm concerned about this, is we have a growing population of people who are on fixed income or Social Security. Social Security increases I have to put my glasses on. Social Security increases for people on fixed income. 2015, 1.7, 2016, 0, 2017, 0.3, 2018 was 3. Projected this year, I guess, is under 1.
Yeah.
So people who were paying taxes in order to support these salaries, their income is growing at a 1% or less, and we're paying people 5% or more. In this particular case, where they both get a step increase and a COLA. And so if I look at all of the data, and I think about what's likely to happen in the future as the economy, the world economy is slowing down, I find it hard to go beyond 2.
There's again, then you need to really talk about what are you going to use for your benchmarks. What we've used has been information that we've had about salaries and CP, and those kinds of things. You're talking about macro issues, and when does the recession come, when does it not come? I don't know how to fit that into this. And again, if we get to another study with another team, we can look at this and say, should we be looking at different metrics? We were looking at local costs of salaries now, here in this area, knowing that 2 years from now, anything can happen. We're doing a budget 2 years out. But all we have is the numbers we have right now. And we have government numbers, and we have local numbers, and we'll look at the Social Security number, and we have to make a judgment. I think those are better. They're not perfect, but they're numbers that at least talk about salaries in this geographic area and not about macro kind of economic things that I don't know how to integrate into the town of Dover.
So I think first of all, we're not going to solve the issue here.
No, we're not.
You know, we need to change the way we're doing this. I think the first step is to do the new wage study and to determine, you know, where people lie and which positions need to be increased. Secondly, I think it's very unfortunate that this discussion is happening here in open session. All other negotiations are done in executive session, and I think the people we are talking about are the people that supported us and have supported us through turmoil in the last year or so. And to have this discussion and to argue over 1 percentage point where all of these people here have given us and supported us to keep things afloat, it's unfortunate that this conversation has to happen. This has been the system we've used. It's not perfect. We've tried to bring people up to the median. We haven't been able to. We know there are positions here. 3% sounds a little high. It may be quarter of a basis point over where some of the unions are getting for this year. I think, given the circumstances, given the fact that Warrant has approved this as well, I would like to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Personnel Board
For this year.
for this year and going forward to change the process. I would also like to say that this conversation needs to happen in executive session going forward. And it needs to happen a lot earlier if we are going to use it as guidance for the budget process.
I absolutely agree. I would agree with you.
So do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
So 2-1.
2-1.
So, Madam Chair, can I, just a comment, I agree with the rationale that this year, and I agree that with the rationale of having this on the books for this year, and I also defer to Warrant in the hours and time that they put in. I respect that, and if it's their opinion that this should happen, then I wouldn't challenge that opinion at this time, but I really would like to take your recommendation to that next level, because we do this in over many months with our last contract, and we put painstaking time, and the comparability that this board put in to the union contract was quite literally taking each town that union members resided in, going to the private sector within that town and asking the members of the private sector who hold the same criteria for job description, specifically Class 2 operator's license and hydraulic permits and so forth, what they were doing for their employees at that level. So we did a painstaking search to determine where we were on that scale.
Well, John, as I mentioned, we're 20 minutes behind for the moderators meeting. Those are all good suggestions. We will revise the process. Right, the first step is to get that study done. I mean, do we have enough in the professional budget to get it done for now?
I need to go through the quotes because we talked about some of the other personnel-related
Okay.
items at the last meeting that we were interested in doing. But I can get back to the board with what those quotes are, and we either, make a decision on whether to do a full-scale one or a targeted one based on certain positions. But we also get a recommendation on maybe, how salary adjustments are made in the municipal setting moving forward, So there are options out there, and I'll provide the board with that information.
Thank you. And we'll invite the personnel board to those meetings too. Thank you both.
So do you do?
Thank you.
Yep, so now, do I adjourn to go to the moderator? What do I do? Somebody tell me.
Is this posted as a selectmen's meeting?
I have no
Separate?
idea.
Moderators is separate.
So
So
do
we
I
should adjourn.
adjourn?
So adjourn.
Okay, so then I'll make, do we make a motion?
Motion.
So I make a motion to
Second.
adjourn.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.